All right, where are we going next?
Noah.
Noah.
Hello, Noah.
Hey, Noah, you're in New Mexico. Welcome to the Atheist Experience with Jenna and Matt.
How are you doing?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We can.
Awesome, man. It's been a while. I've been waiting to talk to you guys finally, but I've been busy. It's funny because I used to be a Christian, and I used to call him Matt Slick Show all the time. And the points he made against, I used to talk to him about evolution, and the arguments he made against it were.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because Matt called me about a week and a half ago to let me know that he was going to be in the Austin area for something. I thought it was this weekend, but I haven't heard back from him. So maybe the trip got canceled.
Oh.
But
Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but you said you used to be a Christian?
Yeah.
What are you now?
I would consider myself a deist.
Okay. A deist with a D?
Yes.
Okay. What did you want to talk about today?
I wanted to talk about why, or is the Old Testament, is the Trinity mentioned in the Old Testament? That seems to be an argument a lot of apologists use to show that the Bible is divinely inspired. I just want to know what you guys think of that argument.
I'm not aware of the Trinity being mentioned in the Old Testament at all, although there are certainly passages that people can go to and interpret after the fact. But
would it matter if it was?
I mean, the Trinity isn't even in the New Testament until you start getting to like the Johannan comma, where you have a late, probably 2nd century interpolation, where the oldest manuscripts don't even mention the Trinity. The Trinity was pretty much invented almost out of whole cloth in like 325 CE.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So it was invented by who? Was it like the Catholic Church or somebody else, or who was it?
Well, so I don't know who edited John to specifically change that passage, but there was a lot of battles within Christianity in the first couple of centuries, and there's a number of really good books on the subject, including probably one of my favorite is Bart Ehrman has a book called Lost Christianities, and it goes through the various views about Christianity that did not make the cut, where you had, people who would view Jesus as holy man or holy God or some mix between, or whether or not he was a physical being in this plane or whether or not it was a spiritual war and all these other things. There was a lot of disagreement, and essentially what happened was the people in charge would get together and vote, and they would kick out the people who didn't necessarily vote the way they wanted to, which is why, the Arian notions about Jesus didn't necessarily hold. I'm not a historian, and I don't even remember a good chunk of the stuff that I previously studied, but that's a good book on it that I'd recommend. But to get to Jenna's point, which was good, let's imagine that all the oldest and best manuscripts from both the New Testament and the Old Testament suggested some notion of Trinity. So what?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't prove that the Bible is divinely inspired, but the argument that the apologists would make is that the Trinity is such a complex theological idea. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit each are one entity, but yet they are different persons, is something that wouldn't be, conceived by just anybody. It would be, it would need, that's something I've heard.
Here's the problem, though. Let's say, and by the way, none of this is explicit. To pretend that the Trinity is something anybody could remotely pretend to accurately understand and demonstrate is just bizarre. Because what we get are countless different explanations. None of them make sense because this is a logical impossibility that violates the law of identity for something to be both what it is and not what it is at the same time and in the same way. I know Christian apologists will try to go down that route, but let's imagine that there was something in the Old Testament that suggested a Trinity. Is it really all that surprising that once that concept's been introduced, it might also be included in the New Testament?
Not really.
And where's the demonstration that there is any such thing as a Trinity, or that the concept is even cogent?
You mean in the Old Testament?
Anywhere.
Well, some people would like to say that there's the Lord in the Old Testament, the Spirit of the Lord, and the angel of the Lord. And some people would say that the angel of the Lord is a pre-incarnate Jesus. The Spirit of the Lord is the Holy Spirit, and the Lord is God the Father.
Yeah,
so that's the thing, is that you can come up with all this stuff, but I mean, I can come up with a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of people who have come up with a lot of stuff, and Star Wars is cool, and there's all kinds of things that people have come up with in the past that have been very difficult to explain.
The issue that I see here is, so we have some notion or some concept of a Trinity that is introduced at some point. I'm going to go with about 325 AD. I'm not quite sure when the Joannem comma was edited. But once that concept exists, it would seem most likely to me that people who find things in the Old Testament that they can interpret as being indicative of a Trinity is them reading into those passages something that they read elsewhere, because otherwise Judaism would have no problem with a Trinitarian concept, and yet that's not a part of Judaism. As a matter of fact, Jesus does not fit the expected Jewish Messiah dialogue at all.
Right. I was watching this video by this minister, and he's a Unitarian. He's not a Trinitarian, and he was making an argument against the Trinity. He was saying that the people who say that the Trinity is in the Old Testament are failing to acknowledge that Jews, or maybe they still do, I don't know, but in Hebrew, if you are, say for example, I said to you, this person told me to tell you this. The person would often speak as the person they're getting the message from. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mom told me to tell you, you better get your damn room cleaned up, or she's going to, not get you dessert.
Right. And a person who said that mom was so if I said to you, your mom told me to tell you to do this, in Hebrew, I would be speaking, I would say, I am mom, even though I'm trying to say that mom told me to tell you this. You understand?
I understand. I can't speak to the validity of that because I'm not conversant in Hebrew.
So in the Old Testament, sometimes the angel of the Lord, who the apologists will say is like a pre-incarnate Jesus, the angel of the Lord often spoke as the Lord himself. But I think I can interpret that as an angel just
before you
that same...
Before you all get, because I'm really interested in this conversation, why? So you said that you're a deist, right? Mm-hmm. Do you believe in the Trinity?
No.
How about we talk about what you do believe?
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Sure. Yeah. And by the way, when I was a Christian, and then I became. This was like. So like 2 years ago, I stopped being a Christian. I was an atheist for around a year.
Okay.
It was mainly part because of you guys.
Cool.
But then I became a deist because I'm open to becoming an atheist again, but I think that there's some evidence for the simulation hypothesis.
Okay. Do you have it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. So one would be, I guess, arguing for. I'm just gonna list them one by one, and I guess we could get to each one. The first one would be, I guess, David Chalmers' argument for panpsychism. The second one would be Adinkra's expressing error-correcting code, which was discovered by James Gates, which expresses how supersymmetry works.
So panpsychism and supersymmetry?
The third one would be the quantum eraser experiment.
So I'm having just mountains of difficulty here because none of those things have anything to do with deism, even if they were correct. Even if we were living in a simulation, that doesn't in any way support the notion of deism. As a matter of fact, that's in direct contradiction with deism, because deism is a God that does not intervene in the material world in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether or not we're in a simulation is a completely independent proposition from whether or not there's a deistic God. And meanwhile, saying that there is evidence that might suggest we're in a simulation is in no way confirmation that we are, because I've also read studies that show how the simulation model simply cannot be correct, that even if we're just talking about the raw processing power that it would take to sustain a seemingly eternal or unending, an unendingly complex set of variables, it's something that we haven't demonstrated is possible. It's, hey, here are these notions that people are suggesting, and we can't rule out the notion that we're in a simulation. So I'm not only not convinced that we live in a simulation, but even if someone were to show me and confirm that, in fact, I'm living in a simulation, what the hell does that have to do with whether or not there's a deistic God?
I think there are different kinds of deism. I mean, I would consider myself more of like a panentheist, which isn't like the traditional view of deism where like God created the universe and just let things go, but rather the universe is constantly sustained by God.
What reason would we have to believe that that's the case?
Because it doesn't make any sense for something to sustain itself.
Oh, isn't that a fallacy?
Yeah, and who said anything is sustaining itself? Isn't the universe rapidly moving towards heat death?
Yeah.
Yeah, so seems to me that we're on a physical clock that is winding down, and I don't see any evidence of anything sustaining it or anything being needed to sustain it other than the physical laws of the universe of particles interacting and energy and matter.
Okay. So, I mean, the laws, though, I mean, what are the laws dependent on? I mean, are they dependent
Nothing.
on themselves?
They're descriptive. They're not prescriptive. It's not like setting a speed limit of 55 miles an hour. There wasn't anybody who set a speed limit on light. This is just descriptive of the limit of the speed that light can travel in a vacuum.
This is how we describe it. This is how we talk about it.
It's what is. It's not, you can't look at the laws of the universe and say, well,
let's change this one.
yeah, somebody decided that the weak nuclear force needs to be this and the strong nuclear force needs to be this. This is what is.
And would it, in any way possible, would that? Well, if the universe is, since the universe is going to end at some point,
maybe
could that mean that if let's just say like if panentheism were true, and the universe was sustained on the, let's just call it the mind of God, is it possible that this universe is in a large network of like the mind of God? Like it's just...
So if that were true, is it possible? Maybe. But why are we assuming that that's true?
Because of the certain things I listed that seem to indicate that the universe is the result of some kind of intelligence.
You didn't list anything that said the universe is the result of some kind of intelligence. This is a new variable you've just pulled out of thin air right now.
Yeah, he just explained to you how that doesn't explain any deism.
Well, I was listing things that show that it's likely that the universe is a simulation, and if the universe is a simulation, wouldn't that show it's the result of an intelligence?
So, but you found evidence that it's possible, correct?
Or likely.
What makes it more likely? What makes it likely?
Well, I mean, if the universe is, let's just say, okay, so if there is so from like the panpsychist point of view, okay, since I don't really think that substance dualism makes much sense, it would, but consciousness, I mean, there are physical things and consciousness is a thing. I think we can both agree that there are physical things and conscious things. But I think that the term there's matter and there's mind, I don't really agree with the two separate terms, because they are opposite from each other in every way. So there seems to be an interaction problem. I think it'd make much more sense if there is a monistic substance that has dual aspects to it, has physical aspects and...
No. Oh, my God.
So maybe that's possible, but what if you're wrong?
I could be wrong.
Okay.
Well, the thing is, you are wrong. Not so much
Okay.
about the conclusion you've reached, but on the methodology that you've used to convince yourself that this is a reasonable conclusion.
Right.
Because you're both against substance dualism, but then you talk about dual characteristics and are portraying that there must be some explanation for that. Well, first of all, I'm opposed to substance dualism as well. And for me, mind is simply what the brain does. It's a description of this. It's not something that exists independently or needs any explanation, any more than wetness is something that exists absent interaction of water molecules. It's not like a single... Okay, but what?
Okay. But the thing is, though, is if the universe is fundamentally made of inanimate matter, how would consciousness exactly arise from that?
Okay, that's a really good question. Stop pretending that you have an answer to it. Stop pretending that because you don't have an answer to it, that you can therefore justify reaching out to hypothetical answers as if they answer it.
Right. If I don't know, then I don't know.
What is consciousness and what is the explanation for consciousness? Congratulations. That's one of the hard problems in philosophy that is unresolved. I'm personally of the view that consciousness, like I was talking about with mind, is something that is the product of a brain. But let's say we have no explanation for it, then we're in a position where we have no explanation, and that doesn't mean you get to claim that a deistic or pandeistic or panpsychic view is somehow likely just because you think that it offers an explanation for something for which we don't have an explanation.
Okay. Well, why couldn't I say that it is likely? Because since it wouldn't make...
Because you don't know.
Likelihood needs to be demonstrated. The fact that you found something that you think makes more sense is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is why you think it makes more sense. And if there was good reason to think that these models make more sense, I'm pretty sure that they would be getting, Nobel Prizes and everything else, and not just calling into a show saying, well, I was an atheist, but now I'm a deist because I can't think of a better explanation for consciousness than a panpsychic goddish being.
Well, I'm not asserting that there is a...
You're saying you believe it?
Like it's God. Yeah, I believe it, but isn't that different from making a truth claim?
No. Why?
Saying you believe something is saying, I am convinced that this is most likely the case.
Because saying something is likely and saying something is true are two different things.
Do you think that you choose what you believe in?
I choose what I believe in based on the things that I see.
The things that you see?
Experience. Yeah, I mean, like...
Did you see any
I see a book in front of
deity?
me. Do I see a deity?
Have you seen ever any kind of deity?
Hang on. If you see a book in front of you, what belief do you then choose?
Well, it's not really like... I know exactly where you're getting at. Like, belief's not a choice. It's not a simple choice. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah.
You are either convinced of something or you're not, and you can be convinced for good reasons or bad reasons.
I don't know why you would be okay with being convinced of something that you can't prove is true. I mean, that's embarrassing to me.
Because I could be wrong about it, but it seems that the evidence seems to show that it is likely that it is true. That's why. I mean, like, I could be wrong about the book in front of me. I could be like a brain in a vat, right? But there'd be nothing that makes it likely.
We don't have to
Likely.
go into that at all. We can start talking about the reality that we experience and the facts about that reality. We don't have to talk about it as if there's something beyond reality. As a matter of fact, that may well be a mistake.
So I think I see what you're saying. So there's a word that I learned from a really good book I just recently read called satisficing, where, for example, if you're going into a convenience store and you need to buy a pen and there's, 50,000 pens to choose from, you satisfice. You say, okay, well, this is good enough. And so I'm just going to take it, even though it may not be the best pen for what I'm trying to do. I'm just going to be, okay, this is fine. I'll take it, right? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like, I'll just take this belief because it's good enough?
I'll take the belief because, well, okay, as far as like the book is concerned, there's nothing that would lead me to the conclusion that I am a brain in a vat.
Well, but are you saying that you accept this belief because you don't feel the need to investigate it further? That you don't need to find out what actually is true?
Well, I care about what's true, sure.
Would you like to believe things that are true and avoid believing things that are false?
Sure.
Then why would you believe something when you acknowledge that you don't have a way to demonstrate that it's true? It just seems likely based on what you've seen.
Because I think that there's a difference between a belief claim and a truth claim. Like I like, for example,
why?
I believe, so for example, I believe that my mother loves me.
Okay.
Okay. Because everything she's done, to support me, to keep me alive, to raise me, that shows that she loves me.
Do you see how it can possibly be harmful if you're wrong?
Sorry?
Do you see how it could be possible that it could be harmful to you if you're wrong?
Yeah, it could be harmful to me if I'm wrong. I mean,
so does it matter if she actually loves you or not? In the way that you need to be loved? Because love is relative.
Does it matter to me if she loves me or not? I mean...
Does it matter if you believe it? Does it matter if she actually does?
I don't really know, but the point what I was trying to get at is if it's most likely that she does love me, but she could be a crazy...
Sure.
Well, that's my point, is that she could be somebody who doesn't love you in the way that you need to be loved. And in that case, you would need to acknowledge the fact that she doesn't, because it's true, and you would need to do whatever you can to protect yourself from whatever harm she could bring to you, whether it's just emotional stress or physical harm or just gossiping about you and putting you in a bubble. I mean, there could be so many things that can be harmful to you for simply believing something that is not true. And that's why I think that this is the most important thing that I could ever do in my entire life, is because just by you believing in something that is not necessarily true, what else can you believe that is not necessarily true? Are you going to believe that your mother loves you just because you think you should? Well, but you can be hurt.
But there's another issue here, and that is you may well have a rationally warranted belief that your mother loves you, because you may have mountains of evidence of her actions and her words and everything else that leads to a reasonable conclusion. But the reason you can do that is because we have at least a passing understanding of what love is, different ways of classifying it. We know ways to demonstrate it. We can tell when a mother is suffering from postpartum depression and they don't have the emotional connection with their kid that they're supposed to. We know that these things are real and true because these are the things we experience. And so that's the lens under which we view all of the data that can lead you to a reasonable conclusion that your mother exists. No such information exists to give you a lens to reach a conclusion about a simulation or a deity.
Exactly.
But how do you know that there's not?
We don't.
No, we don't. We never
don't claim
said there
to
was.
know. We say we don't know.
The point is
So we're not
to
gonna
not
guess that there
believe
is.
something until there's a good reason to believe it. That doesn't mean that I'm saying we're not in a simulation. It doesn't mean that I'm saying there's not a deistic God. All we're asking is whether or not there's sufficient evidence to warrant belief. And I've been asking this for ages, and nobody ever comes up with anything. And every time we get down to the brass tacks about what they're talking about, it's, oh, here's something we don't know and don't understand, and it's more comforting for me to think that I have the answer than to not.
Okay. But I think that what I was getting back to, like going back to what I was talking about earlier, if the universe is fundamentally made of inanimate substance, it just doesn't.
Okay. First of all, that sentence starts with an if, and I don't know that that's true or accurate or what you're trying to describe.
I think you should replay this conversation and listen to Matt over again, maybe.
Because if the universe is made of anything, it's energy and matter and motion. And while that may not be animate in the sense of here's a thinking agent animate, that's still not. Heat death is when you get to truly an inanimate universe where nothing's moving and nothing's happening. We live in a dynamic universe. So I don't know what you mean by if the universe is made of inanimate stuff.
Well, I mean, if the universe if the universe is fundamentally conscious, I think that would.
Where the hell did that come from?
What if it isn't?
I have no reason to think that.
Because
there's no reason to think the universe is fundamentally conscious. You keep pulling stuff out of nowhere.
Because if the universe is made of fundamentally unconscious substance, then it wouldn't be possible for consciousness to arise from that.
How do you know that?
Wow. This is,
where are you getting
this
this
like
from?
I'm in bizarro land. First of all, you say, if the universe is conscious. Well, we have no demonstration of that, no reason to think that the universe is conscious on any level. But then you claim that if the universe is largely not conscious, then there can be no consciousness, which is just a bald-ass assertion that flies in the face of the facts of reality. Because I'm conscious.
Why does it? Okay. Yes, you are. Yes, we are conscious.
And you are asserting that I can only be conscious if the universe is fundamentally conscious. That's the position you are pushing. How do you know that?
Because consciousness doesn't emerge from unconsciousness.
Prove it.
How do you know that?
Because you either have awareness, or experience, which is consciousness, or you don't have experience. How could something
okay.
What does that mean?
The fact that there are two possibilities in no way demonstrates that one of them cannot arise from the other one. You might as well be saying an individual water molecule isn't wet and therefore wetness cannot exist.
Well, it is the water molecule and the hydrogen molecules will make water and wetness. I mean, but the thing is, though, is that
you just failed like epically. Water molecule is a molecule with hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen.
I'm sorry. Yes, my bad.
Yeah, it's the interaction between those that produces the thing that we describe as wetness. And it may be fair to say that water isn't wet, but things become wet based on their interaction with water. But what we're talking about is that slippery thing which does not exist until there's an interaction. But we know that I'm conscious, and at some point, my brain was not conscious. It was still forming, right?
Uh-huh.
So my non-conscious developing brain as an embryo was not conscious, and then that led directly to something which is conscious. And
so there's different levels.
You're saying that can't happen.
Yeah, no, I think there was a very limited form of consciousness when your brain was first forming.
Okay.
Congratulations. I no longer give a rat's ass what you think because you have given no demonstration. You're just like, oh, well, I think this. Oh, well, I think that. Well, oh, well, I think that. Okay.
I think something completely different.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want evidence. And when you say that it's not possible for consciousness to arise unless the universe itself is conscious, how do you demonstrate that?
Well, I mean, is every form of evidence empirical? I mean, like, does it, like, do I, like, I mean...
Why is this so difficult? You have made a claim that X is impossible, and when I ask you to demonstrate it, you can come nowhere near anything that would be remotely considered a demonstration. The best that you came up with right off the bat was, well, there's consciousness and non-consciousness, and those two things can't be together.
Well, because I mean, because you can't conceptualize. Can you conceptualize unconsciousness, therefore then creating consciousness? I mean,
what the hell difference does it make whether or not I can conceptualize it? You are asserting that something is impossible, and I'm asking you to demonstrate how you know it's impossible.
Because there is something called, well, there's a difference between natural possibility and logical possibility.
What does...
And that's irrelevant too. You're saying that X is impossible. Demonstrate it or I'm moving on.
Because...
If you can't, you can say that.
Because a substance... all right. I'll just say it one more time, okay?
Because that'll help.
A substance is... Well, I mean, because there's no point in me, like, saying it over and over again.
Exactly.
Can you demonstrate it or not?
Can I demonstrate...
that it is impossible for consciousness to arise unless the universe is fundamentally conscious?
Well, how would you want me to demonstrate it?
You could take consciousness and show us somehow. You could...
It's not my job to tell you how to demonstrate something. You can either demonstrate it or you can't. The point we're trying to get to is that you've asserted that something is fundamentally impossible, and you are using that as a cornerstone to bolster your other beliefs. And you cannot demonstrate the first thing.
Seriously, though, listen to that call over again.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.